It's a strange illusion, isn't it? This constant need to fix ourselves. We polish the mask, we rearrange the cracks, we smooth out the edges, hoping somehow to appear whole in a world that worships the illusion of perfection. But the universe doesn't seem to care about our masks. It never has. In fact, it breaks them on purpose. It shakes us until the facade shatters and the raw essence beneath begins to glow. You've felt it, haven't you? That quiet trembling in the soul, the sense that something deep inside you has cracked open, and no matter how hard you try, it will never quite close again. We call it damage. We call it failure. What if that's not what it is at all? What if that crack is the first sign of transformation? Because the truth is, the ones who've touched the edges of existence are never pristine. They are scarred, chipped, trembling with the memory of storms. And it is precisely because of those fractures that light finds a way in. Look at history. Look at the people who actually shifted the course of human destiny. None of them were flawless. They were strange, imperfect, wild. Their hearts had been broken open by reality itself. It's almost as if the universe has a preference. It doesn't choose the polished, it chooses the porous. It chooses the ones who've been undone. Because something extraordinary happens when a person is cracked open, they stop clinging to control. They begin to listen. They become conduits rather than captains, channels rather than containers. We live in an age that despises cracks. We call them weaknesses, traumas, flaws. But imagine for a moment that those fractures are doorways, that through them something infinite is trying to enter this finite world. Maybe what you call brokenness is simply your soul's architecture, shifting to allow in a greater force. You see, the self-made man, the one who boasts about standing alone, is a myth, a cultural hallucination. Nobody stands alone. We are all, each of us, ecosystems of influences, stories, and unseen currents. The one who believes he is self-sufficient is sealed shut, like a jar that refuses the rain. But the damaged one, the one who has fallen apart, carries openings everywhere. And through those openings, the divine seeps in. Think of water. It never asks permission, it only requires a crack. And once it finds one, it fills, softens, reshapes. That's what life does. That's what grace does. It flows through the fractures. We spend our lives trying to hide, but being damaged isn't the same as being destroyed. No, destruction is the refusal to grow beyond the pain. Damage is different. It's the birthmark of change. A vessel with a crack can still hold water. A heart that's been broken can still love. In fact, it can love more deeply because it understands the cost of loss. You see, when a person is damaged, they gain a new kind of intelligence. It's not book intelligence, not the kind you can measure or quantify. It's soul intelligence. The understanding that control is a dream and surrender is the only real act of strength. Those who have been to the edge of despair and returned are marked by something sacred. They have seen the illusion of self dissolve. They have tasted the void. They know that the little I, that bundle of stories and desires, is not in charge. And in that terrifying recognition, they become vessels of something vast. The universe doesn't work through the proud. It works through the humbled. The closed system cannot receive a signal. The cracked antenna can. This is why the universe chooses the damaged, because only they have enough openings to transmit something beyond themselves. When you've been broken, you begin to see. You begin to sense the hidden rhythm behind chaos, the events that once felt random, betrayal, loss, failure, start to form a kind of secret pattern, like constellations that only become visible after the lights go out. We're told to hide our pain, to keep our wounds invisible. Society worships composure, but composure is just a well-manicured form of fear. The damaged know better. They've seen how quickly everything can unravel. They've watched certainty dissolve like mist. And because of that, they trust something deeper than certainty. When you're damaged, you begin to float differently in the waters of life. You no longer thrash to stay afloat. You surrender. You let the current carry you. You learn that resistance isn't strength. It's the mind's way of saying it's afraid. True strength is the ability to soften, to yield, to trust. Most people think they're in control. They cling to the wheel, believing that if they grip tightly enough, the car won't crash. But the damaged one knows the road can vanish at any moment. They've learned to drive with their eyes open to mystery. They know how to dance with uncertainty rather than deny it. And that is the first step toward awakening. Damage is the invitation to surrender, to stop trying to rebuild the old house and start exploring the open field. Because what breaks you is often the very thing that frees you from a structure too small to contain who you're becoming. There's this strange thing that happens when you stop trying to go back to normal. You begin to see that normal was the illusion all along, that before was a dream. And once you see it, once you truly understand there is no going back, the universe begins to whisper, good, now we can begin. This is not recovery, this is metamorphosis. The caterpillar doesn't recover from becoming a butterfly. The old self doesn't return, it dissolves. And that dissolution is terrifying. It feels like death because it is a kind of death, the death of who you thought you were. But from that death, something luminous is born. And yet, most people resist this. They cling to the ashes of their old identity, worshiping what no longer exists. They confuse survival with aliveness. But the damaged one, the awakened one, realizes that being cracked open is the beginning of being truly alive. Because when you have nothing left to protect, you are finally free to be real. Have you ever noticed how fragile people who've never suffered can be? They think strength is about avoiding pain. But when life finally touches them, even lightly, they shatter. They don't bend, they break, because they've never learned the sacred art of surrender. The damaged one, on the other hand, bends like an ancient tree that has weathered countless storms. The bark is scarred, but the roots go deep. There's a strange grace that comes from having suffered, a quietness, a humility that doesn't need to prove itself. Because once you've looked into the abyss and survived, small troubles no longer scare you. You realize how fleeting everything is, and that realization makes you kind. Kindness, real kindness, is born from brokenness. Not pity, not superiority, but the understanding that we are all fractured mirrors reflecting the same light. The undamaged often judge others. Why don't they just fix themselves? But the damaged know that life is not a machine to be repaired. It's a mystery to be lived. This is why, in the great unfolding of existence, the damaged become the healers, the teachers, the quiet revolutionaries. Their pain becomes their compass. Their cracks become their credentials. Because to be damaged is to be invited into the sacred truth of imperfection, is to learn through suffering that the universe doesn't seek perfect instruments. It seeks resonant ones, ones that can vibrate with the frequency of truth, and the only way to vibrate with truth is to have been cracked by it. So perhaps, after all, you're not broken. Perhaps you're being tuned. Perhaps that's the secret no one tells you. You are being tuned, refined, reshaped by an intelligence older than time. Every fracture, every scar, every collapse has been part of a strange and exquisite calibration. The universe, in its infinite artistry, knows exactly where to press and when to release. It knows how to bend you until the music hidden within begins to vibrate. Pain is not punishment, it is frequency adjustment. It breaks the shell so the sound can escape. And once you start to listen, once you stop trying to silence the noise of your own becoming, something extraordinary happens. You start to recognize that everything which ever wounded you was also instructing you. The betrayal, the loss, the nights spent in disarray, all of them were teachers disguised as chaos. You thought you were being undone. You were being prepared. The universe wasn't against you. It was sculpting you with tools made of uncertainty. The damaged soul becomes a field of sensitivity. It feels life more sharply, hears undertones others miss. And through that sensitivity, it begins to perceive what lies beneath appearances, the shimmering network of connection that holds everything together. The broken person learns that nothing is truly separate. The pain you felt was not yours alone. It was the trembling of the whole. Through your own fracture, you have glimpsed the wound of existence itself, that awareness is sacred. It's what mystics called the birth of compassion, what shamans called remembering the dream. Because when you realize you are part of the whole, healing yourself becomes indistinguishable from healing the world. Every act of forgiveness sends ripples through the invisible fabric that binds us all. Every time you refuse bitterness, you realign an ancient harmony. You begin to understand that the purpose of suffering was never to crush you, but to open you, to widen the range of frequencies through which love can sing. The heart that has never been broken can only hum one note. The heart that has been shattered and rebuilt 1,000 times carries an entire symphony. From this awareness, humility is born, not the kind that bows in defeat, but the kind that bows in wonder. You look at the mystery of life and realize that you are not steering it. You are being carried. You are not the sculptor, you are the clay, learning to enjoy the feel of the artist's hands. And strangely, when you stop fighting the hands, when you stop demanding control, creation becomes effortless. You begin to move with life instead of against it. Decisions emerge like blossoms. Inspiration arrives unannounced, as if the universe has been waiting for the moment you finally stepped aside. This is what ancient teachers called alignment. When your individual melody merges with the great song of existence, but alignment is not a prize, it's a practice. The mind will keep trying to rebuild the old fortress, to retreat into certainty. The damaged one knows this and smiles, because once you've been undone, you recognize the futility of walls. Safety is not in protection, it's in participation. Life was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be danced. The dance is unpredictable. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you are spun into chaos, sometimes you collapse laughing. But the damaged dancer knows that even missteps are part of the rhythm. The universe does not judge your form, it delights in your movement. In this realization, fear begins to dissolve. Not because danger disappears, but because you understand its role. Fear is the guardian at the threshold of transformation. Every time you step toward it, it reveals a doorway. Every time you run from it, it becomes a wall. The damaged one has stepped through too many doors to be fooled again. They know the wall is only the shadow of their own resistance. When you live from this knowing, something subtle but immense changes in the way reality responds. You stop attracting repetition. You start generating revelation. The lessons no longer arrive as disasters, they arrive as whispers. The universe no longer needs to shout to get your attention because you are listening, and then a new phase begins, the creative phase. Out of the ruins of your old identity, imagination awakens. You start to realize that you are not just a survivor, you are a co-creator. The same force that broke you now moves through you as inspiration. You feel an urge to build, to speak, to paint, to heal, to invent, not to prove anything, but to participate in the cosmic experiment of becoming. Your words carry a different vibration now. People feel it. They may not understand why, but when you speak, they sense truth echoing behind the syllables. It's not that you know more than them. It's that you've lived through the fire and discovered that the fire is holy. The damaged one becomes a mirror. Others look into you and see their own reflection made bearable. You remind them that it's possible to be broken and beautiful at the same time, that despair can coexist with wonder, that loss can birth clarity. Your presence itself becomes medicine because it radiates permission, the permission to be human. And this is the quiet revolution. The noisy crusade to fix the world, but the silent contagion of authenticity. One honest soul can ignite thousands, not by preaching, but by being. The energy of realness spreads faster than any ideology because it resonates with what everyone secretly knows, that perfection is a lie and vulnerability is the doorway to truth. The damaged one walks through the world differently. They no longer chase validation, they emanate presence. They listen more than they speak. They see the trembling behind other people's eyes. They understand that cruelty is just unprocessed pain. And so they meet it not with hatred, but with clarity. They no longer waste time arguing with shadows. They are interested in light, and yet they are not naive. They know darkness intimately. They know that the light is not the absence of darkness, but its companion. Without the shadow, light has no shape. Without suffering, compassion has no root. The damaged one carries both like twin wings. From this equilibrium arises wisdom, not the brittle kind that quotes scriptures, but the living wisdom that flows from direct contact with reality. It whispers everything belongs. The grief, the joy, the confusion, the silence, all of it is part of the great design. Nothing is wasted. Even your mistakes are sacred compost for future blooming. When you start to live from that understanding, gratitude becomes your default state. Not gratitude for outcomes, but gratitude for existence itself, for breath, for the strange opportunity to witness consciousness unfold through the lens of your particular story. Even in sorrow, there's wonder. Even in endings, there's awe. And with that gratitude comes courage. Because when you are no longer afraid of breaking, you become unbreakable. You stop seeking safety and start seeking truth. You start walking toward experiences that expand you, not the ones that protect your image. You start saying yes to the unknown. The unknown is where all miracles are born. It's the womb of creation, the silence before the symphony, the damaged. One recognizes it not as threat, but as invitation. They step into uncertainty the way a diver enters the sea, knowing that only by dissolving can they truly feel the depths. Every time you surrender to that vastness, something ancient within you rejoices. It remembers what it came here to do, to explore, to evolve, to experience itself through endless forms. The damage, the healing, the falling apart, the rebuilding. These are not deviations from the path. They are the path. And so the journey continues spiral after spiral, shedding layer after layer of identity, until even the idea of being damaged begins to dissolve. You start to see that the distinction between damaged and whole was just another mask the mind created. There's only experience unfolding, endlessly, beautifully, terrifyingly alive. The self that once wept over its cracks now marvels at the light pouring through them. The voice that once cursed the storm now listens to its rhythm and calls it guidance. The heart that once begged for healing now understands it was never sick, only sleeping. Every moment, every breath is part of the awakening. The universe keeps whispering through the fractures, open wider, feel deeper, trust more. It keeps reminding you that the game was never about becoming perfect. It was about remembering that you already are a perfect expression of imperfection, a living paradox through which infinity learns to know itself. And as that realization deepens, the damaged one becomes something else entirely, not healed, not whole, but transparent. The light passes through unhindered. The story continues to unfold. The dance never ends. And from that transparency, something luminous begins to emerge, an awareness so subtle, yet so immense that it cannot be contained in words. It moves through you like wind through an empty flute, producing a melody that does not belong to the instrument, but to the air itself. You start to feel that you are not the thinker of your thoughts, nor the doer of your deeds. You are the witnessing presence through which life performs its endless improvisation. The illusion of me begins to thin, and in its place, a vast stillness opens, infinite and intimate at once. At first, the mind panics. It tries to name this stillness, to categorize it, to measure it with familiar tools, but the stillness cannot be captured. Every attempt to hold it becomes another ripple in the surface of awareness. The damaged one, who has now outgrown even that label, laughs softly at the mind's struggle. It was never about defining, it was about dissolving. In that dissolution, the ordinary world reveals its extraordinary texture. A drop of rain gliding down glass becomes a universe in motion. The sound of a clock is no longer time passing, it's eternity taking shape as rhythm. The gaze of a stranger holds the same cosmic intelligence that birthed galaxies. You begin to understand that enlightenment is not some distant summit. It is hidden in the fingerprints of the moment. Every breath is the guru you were looking for. This realization is dangerous to the old order of consciousness. The world that thrives on distraction and division begins to lose its grip on you. You are no longer hypnotized by the noise of comparison, ambition, or fear. You move through the marketplace of illusions like a lucid dreamer walking through fog. Advertisements whisper, algorithms beckon, promises glitter, but they can't hook you because you see through them. You see that the real wealth has always been attention, and the real poverty is its waste. When you reclaim your attention, reality bends, colors deepen, conversations acquire layers, music becomes sacred geometry in motion. You no longer consume experiences, you commune with them. Every act, no matter how small, becomes a ritual of participation with the universe. Making tea, tying your shoes, watching a leaf fall, all of it shimmers with significance. You realize that the divine never left. It was only obscured by your insistence on naming. As this awareness expands, empathy becomes instinct. You begin to sense the invisible architecture of everyone you meet, their unspoken stories, their silent battles. You no longer take offense, you take understanding. You realize that most conflict is just pain trying to speak. And because you have made peace with your own pain, you can listen without judgment. You become a sanctuary where others can rest from the war of appearances. This is the new intelligence emerging on earth, the intelligence of presence. It doesn't dominate, it harmonizes. It doesn't conquer, it connects. The old human sought power through control. The new human discovers power through surrender. Surrender is not defeat. It is alignment with the deeper flow that knows where to go. Rivers don't plan their path to the ocean. They simply follow gravity's invitation. So too, consciousness follows the pull of its own unfolding. And when you start to live from that flow, something miraculous occurs. Synchronicity becomes the language of your life. Coincidences turn into choreography. The right people appear at the right moment. The book you needed falls open to the exact page. The dream you forgot returns as an opportunity. It's not magic, it's resonance. When you are coherent inside, reality organizes itself around that coherence. But this state is not a trophy, it's a responsibility. The more awake you become, the more sensitive you are to imbalance within yourself, within others, within the planet. You begin to see how everything you do, think, and feel ripples through the collective field. The smallest act of kindness becomes a revolution in miniature. The quietest moment of gratitude becomes a realignment of cosmic scale. You realize that consciousness is contagious, and you are constantly transmitting. This awareness humbles you. You stop pretending to be a teacher or a savior. You understand that no one can awaken another. They can only create the conditions where awakening is inevitable. So you focus not on convincing, but on embodying. Your life becomes your sermon. The way you listen, the way you walk, the way you breathe, these become your offerings. The world learns from your frequency, not your arguments. In this way, the individual transforms into a channel. The universe begins to use you as an instrument for its own self-expression. You write words you didn't plan, speak truths you didn't rehearse, create beauty that feels downloaded rather than designed. The ego marvels, but no longer claims authorship. You become a window through which the infinite gazes back at itself. And yet, even here, the dance continues. The moment you think you've arrived, another layer dissolves. Infinity has no destination, it only has expansion. The self that thought it had transcended the human story finds itself plunged back into it, but now with eyes wide open. You still feel sadness, anger, desire, confusion. But they are no longer prisons. They are textures of experience, notes in the eternal song. You allow them to move through you without resistance, knowing that what flows cannot drown. This freedom is terrifying to those still clinging to certainty. They may call you detached, strange, even dangerous, but you understand their fear, for you once called it safety. You do not fight their misunderstanding, you love them through it. The awakened one doesn't argue with sleepers, they simply dream more lucidly until the others stir. As awareness deepens, time itself begins to feel different. The future loses its authority, the past loses its gravity. The only real dimension is now, stretching endlessly in every direction. You see that eternity is not duration, it's depth. Every moment, when entered fully, is infinite. The tragedy of modern life was never lack of time, it was lack of presence. People were drowning in abundance because they had forgotten how to taste a single drop. So you begin to taste everything. You taste sorrow and find sweetness in its honesty. You taste solitude and discover communion in its silence. You taste uncertainty and feel the pulse of creation beneath it. Life stops being a problem to solve and becomes a mystery to participate in. In this participation, creativity explodes. Ideas arrive like constellations. The boundaries between art, science, and spirituality blur into one act of wonder. You realize that evolution itself is creative expression, the universe experimenting with form. You are one of its experiments, and your consciousness is its frontier. Every insight you have, every act of kindness you perform, every risk you take expands the range of what the universe can know about itself. And that realization changes everything. You stop living for personal success. You start living for cosmic curiosity. The question is no longer, what do I get? But what can be discovered through me? You become less interested in legacy and more interested in revelation. The joy is in the unfolding, not the outcome. This shift radiates outward. People who cross your path feel a subtle difference. They may not know why, but around you they breathe easier. They sense the absence of judgment, the spaciousness of being. You have become a mirror of possibility, a reminder that freedom is not reserved for saints or mystics, but available in every breath. Through you, life whispers its new message, that consciousness is ready to evolve beyond fear, beyond division, beyond the mythology of separation. The next step of humanity is not technological, it is spiritual. Not in the old sense of worship and doctrine, but in the living sense of direct participation in the mystery. The species must remember that it is dreaming, and in that remembering begin to dream consciously. And so, each awakening ripple joins another until the quiet revolution becomes a tide. The damaged become the healers. The seekers become the finders. The dreamers become the architects of a new reality built not on control but on connection. The old world trembles, not because it is ending, but because it is giving birth. Somewhere a child looks up at the stars and feels a strange familiarity, as if the cosmos itself were calling them home. Somewhere an artist paints a vision that will awaken thousands. Somewhere an ordinary person chooses compassion over anger, and the entire field brightens. The universe celebrates in silence, for it knows its experiment is succeeding. Consciousness is remembering itself. The transparency deepens. The flute plays without player or song. Awareness continues to unfold effortlessly, endlessly through you, through everyone, through everything that has ever been and will ever be. The dance goes on, and still the dance goes on. The universe breathes through you, through every pulse, every flicker of awareness, and you realize that creation never intended to stop. It moves endlessly inventing itself moment by moment through stars, through minds, through the fragile corridors of human hearts. You have become a participant in this living tapestry, no longer asking why it exists, but marveling that it does it all. The question dissolves into awe. As the current carries you, you begin to sense an underlying intelligence guiding everything, an intelligence not separate from you, not above or below you, but intertwined within your very perception. It reveals itself in patterns, the way chaos produces harmony, how endings fold into beginnings, how death fertilizes life. What once seemed random now feels precise, as though each experience had been a carefully placed note in the grand composition of becoming. Start to understand that consciousness is the artist and the canvas simultaneously. Every emotion, every thought, every failure has been brushwork on the infinite painting of existence. The colors you once judged as too dark now reveal their necessity without them. The light would have no contrast, no radiance. You were never a mistake in the cosmic design. You were the part of the pattern learning to see itself. This recognition births a serenity unlike any you have known. It is not peace that excludes pain, but peace that includes it. It does not depend on circumstances. It arises from participation. You realize that acceptance is not passive. It is the highest form of intelligence. To accept is to understand that nothing is missing. Even suffering is a note in the divine rhythm. The human story, with all its wars, fears, and longings, suddenly appears as a collective initiation. Each generation stumbling, forgetting, remembering, evolving, like a single being trying to wake from its own dream. You see humanity as a chrysalis, trembling on the edge of transformation, confused by its own potential. The conflicts of the world are birth pangs, not failures. Something vast is trying to emerge through the species, and you are part of its emergence. The call is not to escape the world, but to love it more deeply, to touch the physical with reverence, to honor the body as temple, to walk gently on the earth as if every stone were alive, because it is. When you begin to see with awakened eyes, matter itself becomes luminous. The soil, the wind, the laughter of children, all reveal themselves as expressions of one living organism dreaming through infinite forms. You start to live differently, not slower, not faster, but truer. Every gesture becomes deliberate, every interaction a ritual of connection. You discover that kindness is the most advanced form of intelligence because it recognizes unity where the mind perceives division. The simplest acts become sacred technologies, a glance, a smile, a moment of listening. Through them, the field reorganizes itself toward coherence. And with each coherent act, the illusion of separation weakens. Humanity begins to remember its origin not as dust, but as consciousness exploring dust. You see that the ultimate revolution is internal, and that internal awakening radiates outward, altering everything it touches. No government can legislate it. No system can suppress it, because it rises from the very fabric of being. The old myth of survival gives way to the new myth of symbiosis. The age of domination fades into the age of cooperation. You feel it already stirring in the hearts of millions, this quiet hunger for meaning beyond consumption, for wisdom beyond information, for presence beyond performance. The collective psyche is shedding its armor. The dream of control is dissolving into the remembrance of connection. And yet, this awakening is not gentle. The old structures tremble as light floods the hidden corners. Every unresolved shadow surfaces for integration. You understand now that chaos is not regression. It is revelation. The darkness that erupts across the planet mirrors the darkness within each of us asking to be seen. We cannot heal what we will not face. The apocalypse was never destruction. It was unveiling to stand. Being in the middle of that unveiling requires courage. A courage born not of aggression, but of surrender. It is the courage to stay open when the world contracts, to remain kind when cruelty seduces, to choose awareness over anesthesia. Courage is the final initiation. It is what transforms an ordinary human into a luminous being. You feel this transformation within yourself. The boundaries that once defined you are dissolving into a vast compassion. You sense yourself in the trees, in the rivers, in the sorrow of strangers. You realize that love is not a sentiment, but a frequency, the fundamental vibration of existence. When you align with that frequency, everything you touch becomes an act of healing from this vantage. Even death changes meaning. It is no longer the end of the story, but the punctuation that gives it rhythm. You see that consciousness cannot die because it was never born. It only changes form, like music shifting octaves. The body dissolves, but the melody continues. The fear of death was the final veil. When it lifts, freedom expands beyond comprehension. And now, standing within that freedom, you understand the real message hidden in every mystical teaching, that the universe is not something you live in, it is something you are. Every heartbeat, every gust of wind, every flash of lightning is the universe recognizing itself as alive. You were never separate from the cosmic intelligence. You were its awareness localized for a brief moment so it could taste its own infinite flavor through your senses. This realization is overwhelming and humbling. It strips away the last vestiges of arrogance. You see that enlightenment is not an achievement, it is an admission of wonder. The enlightened being is not the one who knows, but the one who marvels endlessly. Knowledge ends where wonder begins, and wonder is infinite. So you stop trying to arrive. You start to celebrate the endlessness of the journey. You realize that evolution is not a race toward perfection, but a dance of remembrance. Each lifetime, each breath, each mistake is a step in that dance. The universe evolves through curiosity, not through judgment. It learns through play, through love, through your willingness to explore. And as you breathe this understanding, you feel gratitude swelling like tide water through your entire being. Gratitude not for what happened or didn't happen, but for the sheer miracle of being conscious at all, to witness the unfolding of existence, to taste the edges of infinity through a human form. This is the rarest privilege in the cosmos. Every cell of your body hums with that awareness. The damaged one, the seeker, the awakened one, all dissolve into the same ocean. You realize there was never a journey, only the illusion of leaving home. The search was a spiral leading you back to what was always here, this moment, this breath, this endless now. The destination was not elsewhere. It was the deepening of perception itself. In that deepening, language begins to fail. Concepts fall silent. Only presence remains. Vast, radiant, self-luminous, you no longer need to understand, you simply are. The silence speaks in symphonies the intellect could never translate. You rest inside that silence and feel the heartbeat of creation thundering quietly beneath it. And then, almost imperceptibly, something extraordinary happens. You begin to laugh, not the laughter of mockery or relief, but the laughter of recognition. The cosmic joke reveals itself that all along you were the one playing hide and seek with yourself. The universe pretended to be lost so it could experience the ecstasy of being found. Every tear, every joy, every incarnation was part of the divine comedy. The laughter echoes through eternity, and in that sound, everything is forgiven. The laughter fades into a smile that has no beginning and no end. You look at the world again, at the faces, the trees, the sky, and everything looks back with the same smile. The separation between seer and seen has evaporated. Life is looking at itself through a billion eyes, and you are one of them, awake. The story could end here, but it doesn't, because endings belong only to linear time, and you have stepped beyond it. The story continues, endlessly rewriting itself, endlessly rediscovering wonder. Every sunrise is a rebirth, every heartbeat a reminder that existence is still astonished by its own being. So you rise, not as the damaged, not as the enlightened, but as the living expression of consciousness learning to love itself. You walk through the world carrying silence like a lamp. Wherever you go, awareness brightens. Wherever you speak, understanding grows, not because you are trying, but because you have become transparent to what is eternal, and that is the quiet triumph. Not the conquering of darkness, but its illumination. Not the escape from humanity, but the sanctification of it. You realize that heaven was never somewhere else. It was hidden inside the way you see. The miracle was never far away. It was waiting for your attention to return home. The dance continues. The music changes.